Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So let's see. First off, are all our speakers sort of down front, ready to roll? Yeah? Okay. All right. Welcome to the Department of Design Research, Writing, and Criticism. My name is Molly Heinz, and I'm the program chair here. And our open house always seems to fall right around election time. So I was having a bit of a flashback to 2016 as I was preparing for this program. And I remember that the day after the election, which this is, back 2 years ago, I got a message from one of our alums and also a good friend of mine, Vera Sacchetti, who was in the class of 2011, and she said something that really resonated with me, and I think it's still applicable, and it's actually, in some ways, a bit of a mission statement for our program here. So I just wanted to share it with you tonight. She said, the way to go forward is to continue doing what we do best, questioning assumptions of what is and what is not, sparking debate, starting conversations wherever and whenever possible. So that is really a great explanation of what we try to get up to here every day in the Design Research, Writing, and Criticism Department. But if you're not familiar with our program, it's a one-year graduate program focused on the study of design, and as we say, it's context and consequences. Design does not happen in a vacuum. What that means really is that we take humanities critical thinking and create sort of a backbone of that with our design history courses and our cultural theory courses, and then apply journalistic tools to that through some writing-oriented courses, and apply all of those things to design subject matter. But what is design? We define it quite broadly here. So apropos of our election, design might be a situation. Ralph Kaplan, who used to be on the faculty here, said that he thought the Woolworth counter sit-ins in Greensboro in 1960 were the best example of situation design in the 20th century. Or it might be a system. Emma Nong, who graduated in 2017, wrote her thesis on designing a better food system, food startups, and the redesign of what and how we cook. And Blue Apron was one of her case studies. So situation, system, silver boots. Cassandra Gerardo wrote about designing identity through Instagram. So we're also trying to explore these new iterations of design that might be user experience, it might be an algorithm, things that are designed but perhaps aren't in fact as visible. So design can really be anywhere and everywhere, and as long as it's human-made and intended to serve a purpose, sure, we'll count it as design, and you can make an argument for why it's worth studying. Even something that might be quite mundane or humble in the eyes of others. And another emeritus faculty member who is unfortunately no longer with us, Phil Patton, was a specialist at that. And we like to operate in the spirit of Phil. Nothing is too insignificant to be studied as design if you do the legwork of putting it in context and thinking about what its consequences are or were. And we sort of have an operating question here that keeps us going day to day, and our current students are already sick of me saying it to them, but that's so what? Like, why does it matter? Why is what you want to study relevant today? And what makes it worth studying? What makes it important? And what are the impacts of the piece of design or type of design or system that you are considering? So we sort of address that question in a lot of different ways here day to day. with different types of assignments, which are trying to really cultivate and refine a variety of skills. And you see some of those here on the screen. And we are packing all of that in to, we call it 1 year, but in fact, it's 9 months, 2 semesters in 9 months. We do give scholarship support as part of the program. We don't just sit here in the classroom, but we get outside and do a lot of site visits. We have people coming in from other places beyond SVA and speaking to us. We do lots of written assignments. We do one gigantic written assignment, AKA the thesis, and of course, lots and lots of reading. This is a snapshot from a few weeks ago when we took the train up to Manitoga, the home of the designer Russell Wright, for a day of kind of forest bathing in Russell Wright's beautiful property. And I wanted to share, if this is the first time you're joining us this semester, we actually open our doors weekly, and we have guest speakers coming in usually every Tuesday, or most Tuesdays. Next Tuesday, we have Mitch Mcewen, who's an architect working with the new museum on a project called Idea City, coming in. I'm really super excited about November 20th when Mark Laubscher, who is a brilliant writer, is coming in to talk about his new biography of the architect Philip Johnson, which has already gotten great acclaim. And then on the 26th and November 26th and also December 11th, we actually have 2 alums coming in to talk about their books. Biodesign by Will Myers was actually his thesis project that got converted into a book and now is in a 2nd edition. Kimberly Burks just has a new book out with Phaidon called Design for Children, and she actually roped in a couple of alums to fill out the editorial team for that, one of whom you'll hear from tonight. And beyond sort of our more formal public events, we also have lots of guest speakers and critics coming in all the time for classes, and here's just a sampling of some of those names. But the heart and soul of our program is our faculty. And, we have many faculty members who've been with us since the launch of the program, which was in 2008. And you'll hear from 2 of them tonight who've been here since the beginning, Leital, Molad, and Akiko Busch. And then we'll also be hearing from a brand new faculty member, Spencer Bailey, who's going to be joining us this spring. So without further ado, Leital, would you like to come up? And we're going to be having lots of short presentations this evening and go pretty quickly. And I'm not going to do extended introduction, so give a brief introduction to yourself of a sentence or 2 and keep on trucking. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leital Molad, and I currently am the executive producer of podcasts at First Look Media. That includes The Intercept, which is an investigative journalism site, and Topic Studios, which is a film, TV, audio, and video entertainment studio. And I oversee, launch, and create podcasts for both of those entities. And I have been teaching here since 2008, since the very beginning, when I used to work in public radio. So I had many years of experience in radio. And a couple years ago at the open house, I answered the question, well, why podcasting now? Well, podcasting is really having a moment post-Serial. Now I can say Julia Roberts is starring in a TV show based on a podcast, so maybe we've truly arrived. That's Homecoming, if you haven't checked it out. But podcasts, this kind of incredible moment right now where there are about 500,000 podcasts out on Apple and other mediums. There's a real renaissance happening. People in film and TV are finally, and print, catching on to the idea that all of us radio nerds always knew, which is that audio has a unique quality to it. There are unique qualities to telling stories and doing journalism in audio. For the way that it really captures your listeners' attention and engages them. So teaching audio journalism here in this program is a great opportunity for students to think about other ways to express the ideas of their theses. And basically the stories that they do in my class are something that's connected to the thesis, something that could be one slice of it. And you create one richly reported piece by the end of the abbreviated semester, which involves reporting in the field, writing a script, doing multiple interviews, getting different kinds of sound. And so those are all the skills that the students learn in a very short period of time. And I think most of them can attest that it's pretty fun to do. Even Molly went through it herself. And it's learning to speak your voice on a microphone is also a great skill to have that is applicable to other media as well. So I wanted to just play for you guys a sampling of some of the students' stories from last semester. These are just short clips of 4 different stories, and you'll see, as Molly said, that the subject matter really ranges as to what falls under the big umbrella of design and how they tell these stories.
Some say life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about dancing in the rain. They say, the world may have taken your loved one back, but the memories dance on in our hearts. They may say, the love you shared will always remain in your heart and most treasured memories. They'll often be embellished with flowers, butterflies, natural landscapes. Yep, you guessed it. This is the vast and varied, cheesy and sincere world of sympathy cards.
I'm in the middle of downtown Manhattan. I've asked a couple of strangers how they refer to feces in everyday talk.
Shit, poop. Number 2, crap.
Shit. Like using the bathroom.
Anything else?
Dropping a deuce.
Given our limited vocabulary and our general unease and distaste to talk about shit, it's become a really pressing issue when we think about it from a larger perspective. It's estimated that by 2050, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. With most of the world living in dense urban environments and facing the real effects of climate change, shit and how we shit becomes a hot topic.
I'm Harry. I'm Will.
So, what brought you outside of Cha-Cha Matcha today?
We were walking along and it was pink. We thought it looked cool.
Meet Harry and Will. They were visiting for 2 weeks from Australia. I spotted them creating an impromptu photo shoot outside of Cha-Cha Matcha, a trendy tea cafe in Soho. It's also listed as a must-see Insta spot.
Were you familiar with this place at all prior?
Should I play it?
I think the cafe's up close.
Why did the color pink draw you in?
Even at the moment, it's a pastel, easy on the eyes, and stands out. You know, the contrast, you can get popping up. Yeah, pop.
This is Liad. He is an engineer who's researching how corporations use customer data as part of their business strategy.
It has a microphone that always records what's happening in my home. When you think about it, it's kind of strange to put this spying device in my home that I'm choosing to do so.
Spying device. Perhaps we're thinking about automation from the wrong perspective. Maybe what Google, Amazon, or Apple mean by automation is a cheap, sometimes entertaining, way for these companies to gather our activity data and pass it on to their product marketing teams so that it can be repackaged and sold back to us in the form of ads. Sounds like personal home assistants are just another name for spy home, sweet spy home.
And that is a crime of design.
And that is a crime of design. This is AJ for CSI Design.
Anyway, sorry about the technical difficulties, but those were just samplings of pieces from Heba, Kamal, Cassandra, and AJ, and happy to talk to you more after this. And I think you can hear some of their full stories on the website, right? So thank you.
Thanks, Molly. I'm Akiko Busch, and I'm interested in reading and writing design, and that's pretty much what I teach here. So I heard recently about a British experimental theater company that has produced all of Shakespeare's 36 plays using everyday objects to represent the characters. In tabletop Shakespeare, a spool of thread, a beer bottle, a pitcher, all become the players. Their drama narrated over the landscape of the kitchen table. Henry V is a candlestick. Macbeth, a jar of linseed oil. A messenger is represented by a water bottle, and a servant by a poem, by a spoon. In the YouTube clip that I watched, there was something incredibly mesmerizing about watching Claudius as a can of flea powder and Gertrude as a silver pot as they tried to reason with the salt and pepper shakers, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Yeah, it's riveting. I recommend you Google it and watch it. You see this little salt shaker going across the table, and it's Hamlet and to be, or yada yada. Anyway, I recommend it. I'm not sure quite what makes such a completely ridiculous device work. Maybe it's because we all know that small things can become large things and large things can become small things. Or maybe we know that there's a thin line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Or maybe it's about the way things are arranged and rearranged in physical space can convey some kind of truth. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that language sometimes surpasses what we see in front of our own eyes, and that the right words will make us believe anything. Or perhaps it just has to do with the idea that it takes very, very little for us to give a voice to things and to invest character and meaning into inanimate objects. So this is the kind of thing we talk about in my class. MIT professor Sherry Turkle says, we think with the things we love the things we think with. And what that makes me think is that it makes me think about the way people use physical objects to help them organize experience, which interests me, and it seems to me is essential to how we think about and practice design. So in class, we sometimes begin with news of the day, news of the world, which is to say news stories that are design stories, although they're not presented as such. I'm not one of those people who thinks that all the world's problems can be solved by design, but I am one of those people who's often amazed by how ordinary stories that don't think they're about design really, in fact, are about design. Some of the stories from last year that we talked about were how the size of wine glasses in England are growing. We talked about the use of origami-style cardboard tents that were offered to the homeless population in Brussels. We talked about a proposal to build a sports stadium at Fukushima in an effort to rebrand for the 2020 Olympics, in an effort to rebrand the site of the tsunami and earthquake. And also the graffitied wall outside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, which serves as a message board, apparently, for family members of the incarcerated. But our readings go on from there, to fiction and nonfiction and poetry, and again, different texts that give us clues on how physical objects in space offer us ways to organize experience. We go to George Parekh, the French writer, whose work addresses absence and loss and identity. As an archivist, he examines the basic principles we use to think about space and objects, and he goes from the blank page to furniture, to the room, to neighborhood, to uninhabitable spaces. We go to what Emily Dickinson means by home when she wrote, "Years I had been from home, and now before the door I dared not open it, lest a face I never saw before stare vacant into mine." We go to Pablo Neruda's Hymns to Ordinary Things, which include socks and books and tables and encyclopedias, and to Samuel Johnson, whose last line in his essay about his boarding house included the observation that a single house will show whatever is done or suffered in the world. Some of our outings have included a visit to the Donald Judd House in Soho, which left the class pretty strongly divided about whether the pristine installation represented the simple clarity of Judd's work or whether it reduced or actually erased the factory-like quality of messy production that typified Judd's energy and process. We also went to the Tenement Museum, in which curators comb flea markets and garage sales for objects to furnish the homes of immigrants. It could be a Zenith TV, a wire soap dish, a maroon sofa, a matching mirror and hairbrush that work to tell particular immigrant stories, whether it's an Irish family, a Chinese family with 4 kids, a Puerto Rican single mother, whatever. How do these objects tell their stories? The storytelling enterprise is described by one of the curators as composing a visual historical novel, and that interested me. Last year, we visited the Tiffany Everyday Collection, which generated conversation about the fetishizing of ordinary objects. We all have the compulsion to subvert the ordinary. It's part of common human experience. But what happens when this impulse is commodified by a luxury concern? In that collection, a sterling silver and vermeil rendition of a common ribbed tin can with a blue Tiffany enamel stripe, had a $1,000 price tag. The tin cans in your kitchen and mine are all inscribed with numbers indicating contents, place of origin, place of manufacture, destination, and so on. Unlike the silver can at Tiffany, each one of these tin cans has a real particularity to it. So who decides what makes for an everyday object? Who defines that? To answer that, we turn to Knausgaard's meditations on the meaning of the tin can in his domestic landscape, and believe me, he had a lot to say about it. And essays subsequently written by students included not only ideas about how we make decisions about food that's fresh and food that's preserved, but stories about childhood phones made with tin cans and string, cooking crayons in a tin can over an open fire, recycling, the sense of sufficiency conveyed by a shelf of canned goods, and elementary school charity drives that ask kids to donate canned food, thereby introducing them to ideas about social welfare. So in the years since I've been teaching this class, the virtual world has continued to completely transform our lives, all the while, I think, rethinking and reevaluating our interactions with the physical world. And I would suspect often making it richer and more complex. And it's not just the smart home and smart appliances and smart jewelry on the Internet of Things. Consider the podcast, which we will be considering in class this year. Everything is alive, in which inanimate objects are interviewed. Bars of soap, pillows, subway seats, mousetraps all reveal their inner lives and tell us what they think of us. And again, tabletop Shakespeare, in which a spool of thread, a beer bottle, or a candlestick become the agents in life's dramas. So these are some of the things that we'll be looking at in class this year. They're about storytelling, they're about material culture, and they're about the way we use things to structure and interpret experience, which to my mind is why they belong in a program about design research. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to direct your attention when you leave this room to a table that we have just around the corner, and on it are several publications that are both alums and faculty have authored, so be sure to check them out. And now we're going to segue into hearing from some alums, some recent alums and some not so recent alums, and also a current student. So I'm just going to launch into first Anja Laubscher's presentation. Here she comes. Come on up. And then we'll have some shorter presentations from less recent alums.
Hello, everyone. When Molly asked me to share about the program, the first thought that came to mind was that last year was a jam-packed, design-centered roller coaster ride. And since I only have a few minutes to share, I'll do my best to paint an accurate picture. If you haven't picked up already from my accent, I'm not from here. I'm originally from Johannesburg, South Africa, and moved to New York specifically for this program. After a few years as a graphic designer at a branding studio and then a creative researcher in the advertising industry, my perspective shifted. pushing out design after design, and then later doing research to essentially help brands sell more stuff, I found myself in the midst of an existential design crisis. Why do we design things? What biases influence our design practices? What impact do these design entities inspired by our biases have on our world? In a quest to deepen my understanding of design, I researched numerous master programs and ended up here because essentially we were asking the same question. So what? I joined the class of 2018 in September last year, and over the course of 9 months dabbled in everything from archival research and interviewing to field observations and podcast recordings, all while exploring the narratives embedded in the design environment we interact with every day. There were many highlights as a student in the program. The fact that we studied design in all its manifestations, while we explored its context and consequences. As a group, we researched a wide range of design artifacts, from emoji, museum acoustics, bulldog clips, to surveillance, spam, and even selfie sticks. Looking at design holistically not only opened my eyes to seeing design everywhere, but provoked a new way of thinking and a constant curiosity to explore how design is engendered, presented, and interpreted. Another aspect that I really valued was the freedom given to deep dive and explore things that fascinated me personally. The course was very flexible in the sense that one could really mold the classes, workshops, and assignments into whatever you wanted it to be. Even though our thoughts were often challenged and expanded upon, there was no policing of projects or anything labeled as being a silly idea. Any and every research pursuit was encouraged and supported, and taking ownership was expected. Discussing important and sometimes sensitive cultural topics as a class, and hearing an array of perspectives on design, the world we live in, and our role as designers, researchers, writers, and critics within various contexts helped to sharpen my thinking, communication skills, and listening abilities. And then last but not least, coming into the program as a designer, not a writer, with English being my second language, the program equipped me with the tools to construct compelling narratives about design in multiple formats. After weeks of writing in different styles like op-eds, personal essays, even poetry, coupled with constructive feedback, I became more confident in my writer's voice and ability. So much so that I ended up changing my thesis format from a 3,500-word feature article to 4 long-form essays merely a few weeks before I had to submit my final portfolio. True story. Speaking of my thesis, for my thesis I investigated wayfinding design. In the digital age where the future of wayfinding is believed to primarily depend on technology, I asked how considering wayfinding from a holistic perspective shifts our emphasis from technology to embodiment. My research examined larger issues related to the choreography of social and spatial interactions in public space, the symbiosis between architecture and signage, and wayfinding design's impact on an individual's sense of agency, belonging, and identity. With numerous variables at play in the public realm, I acknowledge that design doesn't strictly dictate movement and interactions within a space, but that it does set up the scene for possible interactions, activities, and interplay between people, spaces, policies, politics, and design artifacts. And upon evaluation and analysis, the gist of my overall thesis was that there is a connection between personally crafting a navigational route and orienting oneself through the decoding of social cultural codes in the built environment. Over the course of 6 months, I read more than 100 theorists and thinkers, spoke to over 30 people, observed movement in 10 public spaces, rewrote each of my 4 essays 3 times, and coined 1 original key term. And while I was doing this, my peers were investigating the infrastructure of shitting, the prescribed design of grief, the realities of surveillance, the phenomenon of mega consumption, the position of the coffee station in co-working spaces, and the social cultural impact of Instagram. An array of topics, approaches, and opinions, all originating from this room, actually. Since graduating in May, I've re-entered the workforce as a content strategist and writer, now equipped with the skills to continue to investigate the questions that underlie the context and consequences of design in whatever shape or form. And over the summer, I had the opportunity to undertake a fellowship with the Alen Institute, a New York-based think tank researching the urban environment, where I researched design and climate impact solutions in the South Florida region. During the fellowship, I conducted extensive archival and design research and wrote an article on Lynda, the founder of Before It's Too Late, a non-profit prototyping lab using art and technology to educate Floridians on climate adaptation and gentrification. And now, having worked as a content strategist freelancer for the past few months, I can confidently say that the skills I acquired during the program have been invaluable in my work. Whether I'm editing a design podcast critically or writing about anything from machine learning to emoji, I continually ask, so what, as I put the essence of this jam-packed, design-centered roller coaster into practice. Thank you.
Okay, and I should also mention that Anja was a recipient of the Paula Rhodes Medal, which is the highest honor that one can receive as a graduate student here at SVA. And she also received the Susan Merritt Award, which is a award given by our alum Susan Merritt, who's in the room, I think, maybe, or close by. Oh yeah, there you are. So Susan generously has donated a small annual award that goes to the student who has the best idea for an applied thesis project, or basically how your thesis research might live beyond the walls of SVA. So thank you, Susan. And now, next up is Hala. So Hala, I will warn you that we've been having a little tech issue with your presentation. So, yeah. So I think we might want to take it offline and have you do yours when we run it like separately. Sure. Okay. All right. Hala is from the first graduating class we had here at SVA. So if you'll excuse me 1 second. Okay. Try that.
Hello, everyone. So it's good to be here. It's been a while for me. So I graduated with the first class in 2010, and it's been a ride since, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey since then. So my thesis project was about one item called the kaffieh, and the journey after graduating with this thesis project. So the kaffieh, just to introduce it for people who don't know, is a scarf. I'm originally from Beirut, and I was really interested in this really typical scarf, but also headwear that was worn in the Middle East. And basically, after extensive work on the kaffieh, what happened was all my research eventually ended up in the items MoMA show that happened last year. So it was, as you see here, object number 52 and 111 most influential items. And this is me after the presentation where I presented with 26 other people presenting their own items. So I was representing the kaffieh, which I was very happy to do. And this is kind of my research that went into the items MoMA catalog. So that's kind of like at the end of this project, but before that I have curated a show in the Lower East Side around the same topic. I've curated it in 3 different countries, as well as spoken at multiple places about this topic. I'm currently working on the book, so hopefully that will be finished before I'm old. But I also wanted to talk to you about what I did after graduation, which is really thinking about how can we take all this critical implementation of design and put it in where I was passionate, which was impact. And so I founded with other designers a platform called Design and Flow, where we really look at innovation and impact, and we work on multiple projects via empowering designers and really trying to create a better space for designers by, pledging to make better work all across. And so these are some of the items that we've worked on. I wanted to show you, this is like our bestseller tote. And so it's kind of by designers, for designers. We kind of really push forth the concepts that we believe in and work on really impactful projects like this one, which is a really favorite of mine, which was really conceived as an answer to the IKEA home that has been championed by the design community, won multiple awards. And this is where really my passion comes in, where I look at these projects that we champion as designers, but actually are a fail and do not get implemented on the ground. And so being from Beirut, these are a lot of the refugee kids that we now have a crisis and we're dealing with in Lebanon, where we have over 2 million refugee kids, 2 million refugees, but 500,000 refugee kids outside of schools. And so I've been working on developing the counter to the IKEA home, which have been this structure which really is built by the locals on the ground and withstands a lot of weather, working with a local architect, and they've actually built and designed the whole thing themselves. This is part of a show that I curated on the same topic at part of New York Design Week, and this was the actual replica of the project that we built here. And one kind of thought that I always take with me is how can we really bridge the gap between what happens on the ground and what is being championed and written about and awarded in design. And I think this is kind of a space that really I'm very passionate about. I've been trying to push in a lot of my work, and I think it's our responsibility as design researchers and critics and writers to really, kind of understand how can we really look beyond just the obvious and go there. And what's really great is that I get to spend a lot of time on the ground to kind of work on these projects, and especially this one. And with the Gupta, what's really great about it is that it keeps on growing. So it started off as just, a design space where we're trying to kind of build a school, but now it's a whole system for education where we look at programming, we look at things on the ground that can make a difference. And we were the recipients this year of the South by Southwest Learn by Design Award for the projects. I'm very happy about that. So one project I'm working on for next year is a research and curatorial project around the augmented self, which is design and technology, and how design is actually affecting the body via technology. And that's going to be a show where I also teach, and I'm the associate director of the strategic program at Parsons, the BBA program. And so kind of working for that. So that's me. Thank you.
Okay, Tara, you're up next. You want to come up while I change over? Okay. All right.
go.
All right, moving on to the class of 2012. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, so as Molly mentioned, I am Tara Dabir, and I am a graduate of the class of 2012. Here I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after presenting my thesis, which examined the intersection of fitness culture and design. The DCRIT program armed me with the broadest definition of design and a curiosity that's driven my work across a variety of agencies, where I've continued to sharpen my skills that I first developed in this program. I've worked on behalf of agencies such as the branding firm Carbon Smolin Agency, the designers that created the iconic signage at the Louvre. They've also recently led Coach Inc.'s transition into tapestry. I also worked at Smart Design, the product innovation company that helped create OXO Good Grips, and also this new Gatorade Smart Bottle. And most recently, I've joined FutureBrand, which is part of McCann World Group, and they created Nestle's Nespresso, the entire brand from scratch, and also recently reinvigorated the Cadillac brand. My work spans both marketing and new business, and as part of my current role, I work to convert new business opportunities by shaping our approach in response to proposals and pitches. I've worked on the creation and launch of proprietary reports, such as this, the 2018 FutureBrand Index, which is shown here. And at these agencies, I've built their marketing functions, sometimes completely from the ground up, helping them articulate their competitive point of difference across a variety of disciplines that have included everything from traditional iconic corporate branding, naming, brand architecture, environmental design, and everything that falls in between. So I've also been creating these multi-channel marketing strategies to ensure that the stories that these agencies are telling align to their business. I make sure that we're talking about the things that clients care about, the things that keep them up at night. In addition to writing case stories that talk about our work, I've also leveraged my writing chops to create white papers such as this and blog posts for our discipline leads. I also write for the FutureBrand blog as well. Here's another one on the future of retail. And I'm able to sort of pick my own topics and kind of continue the writing practice that I started here at DCRIT. I've also partnered with numerous institutions to host design events, including some awesome ones like AIGA, Museum of London, TEDx New York, Wharton. And I've also worked with numerous publications, such as Huffington Post, Forbes, and Fast Company, to name a few. And so really this pivot in my career wouldn't have happened anywhere else but here. Prior to DCRIT, I was a traditional graphic designer, like heavy on Helvetica, like the whole thing. And so at DCRIT, I had the exposure and the access to experts in design across so many disciplines and so many different perspectives. And I was able to take this experience and apply it in a really meaningful way for these agencies across not only marketing, but also new business. And here's how to get in touch. I have email, Instagram, and a slightly outdated website. Thank you.
Do we have Eric around? Eric, time for your PSA.
Thanks everyone for dealing with our seat debacle. There's one chair here, if anyone, or stool. Just wanted to say if you're, and another one here that has a drink on it, but I'm sure it's good. I'm the Director of Operations here, and I just wanted to remind anyone who's a prospective student or interested in the program to come and fill out our handy graduate inquiry form, which I'm pretending to hold here, and that'll just get you more information about the program and get you knowing when the deadlines are, basically. And yeah, we'd love to speak with you after and when we do the reception about the program. So find me or Molly or any of these great alumni you've seen. So I'll let everything keep going. Are we good with tech, or are there issues going on here?
If you could just get Lynda's presentation.
Okay, cool. Lynda, yes. Great. I'll get to work. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Okay.
Lynda Decker.
I think we missed your intro slide, but Lynda Decker, class of
2014.
2014. So we have a pattern here with our even numbers
Hi. Well, 60% of design school graduates are women, yet only 11% hold the title of creative director or higher. On top of that, women are paid 20% less than men, and if you add in the statistics for women of color, the pay gap is as large as 54%. I'm Lynda Decker. I'm National Co-Chair of AIGA Women Lead. I run a design practice, and I am a proud 2014 graduate of this program, where coming here was a very big pivot for me as I own a design practice, and yet what I feel happened was I'm now much more able to lead multidisciplinary teams of designers to accomplish social impact, which is something that is very important to me. So when it comes to diversity in the design profession, gender does not have a pipeline problem. We have a pay and promotion problem. So in order to attack this problem, we started with a very extensive research process, skills that I learned here at DCRIT. And briefly, here's what we learned from our membership. Women face a steeper path to leadership in the workplace, and the causes range from social bias to a lack of mentorship and sponsorship from male leaders. Women are perceived to be less ambitious, less creative, and less humorous than their male counterparts. They're subject to microaggressions in the workplace, stereotyping, and office housework. They are often stuck in middle-level positions or offered promotions that have a high rate of failure associated with them. It's a wonder that we can get through the day. Because in our society, the dominant framework of leadership is exhibited by traits of aggressiveness and assertiveness, male traits. Female traits, such as cooperation and consensus seeking, are considered weak. But yet, women who exhibit male traits are highly criticized and judged harshly. Women who ask for raises are 30% more likely to be told that they are aggressive when they attempt to negotiate that situation. Yet if the same woman behaves in a way that is more female, caring, and empathic, she is not considered leadership material. So our first design intervention was to address gender bias. Enter the AIGA Gender Equity Toolkit. This is a workshop tool with 3 exercises that help participants to build connections, increase empathy, and concludes with a scenario testing exercise. It has been very successful and purchased by a number of leading corporations and even the United States Army for use in workshops. And last month, we launched Double or Nothing, which is an advocacy campaign to double the number of women in leadership positions in design over the next few years. We formed a coalition of leading design agencies and corporate partners, and Emily Oberman's team at Pentagram, we recruited her to design a dynamic brand and messaging. So now, with AIGA's new leadership and the support of our corporate partners, we are determined that we can have more impact if we move from an advocacy position over to a much more entrepreneurial position and embed more AIGA-sponsored programs and products into corporations. This is going to be a really big challenge for us. But there couldn't be a better time to turn words into action, and especially today, where we've elected, as I was just talking about, over 117 women into new political positions. Yay. So I'm often asked, what can you do tomorrow? And really, I would like to just say to everyone, you can make a difference. You can challenge bias in the workplace. Design is an innovation industry, and there's no reason that we can't design a new workplace culture so that everyone can flourish. Pay to offer the same pay for men and women for the same work, and mentor someone. And lastly, speak up, because silence is the worst form of complicity. And get out there and break some glass. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll notice what great presenters our alums are, which in part is because if you are a graduate student here, you're presenting all the time. Okay, next up, keeping with our even number alum theme, we have Alexandria Klimovsky, nom de plume Alex Klimovsky. So Alex, where are you? Would you want to come up?
Hello, everyone. As Molly said, my name is Alex. Currently, I am associate editor at Architectural Record magazine, where I've been since 2016, which is also when I graduated from this wonderful program. That's not the whole class, but a bunch of us. So before I came to SVA, I worked in marketing and PR for an architecture firm called Datner Architects. So I knew when I came here that I wanted my thesis to be about an architectural topic. So eventually I chose the topic of architectural representation, but more specifically architectural renderings. So I studied architectural renderings and also the people and the things inside of the renderings, or the things that occupy the renderings, called scalies. So as I began to examine a lot of renderings, there were several tropes and patterns that would spring up. And so the whole point of my thesis was to ask, what are the cultural implications of these tropes and patterns? And so this program really, it's very writing intensive, which really helped me to land my job very shortly after I graduated as an assistant editor at Architectural Record magazine. So Architectural Record, if you're not familiar with it, it's the longest running architecture publication in the United States. So it's very well known in the architecture world. And it was founded in 1891, and it's really awesome. We have a staff of 9 women and 1 guy who I feel kind of bad for, but 9 women who have, most of them have 20 plus years of experience writing about architecture. So it's been really a treat to have these people edit me and make me a better writer. And so I think my favorite part of the job is just going out and visiting projects and talking to architects. It's kind of like an extension of what we were doing here at the program. And through doing that, I've been able to learn a lot about the architecture industry in just a very short amount of time. And I've been able to feel comfortable enough to interview and write about some very important architects, which I would have been terrified of doing before this program. In this month's issue, the November issue, I wrote an article about Deborah Burke Partners' new dormitory that they designed at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania. Deborah Burke, if you don't know, she's the first woman dean of the Yale School of Architecture. So she's a very inspiring figure. A few months ago, I wrote about 2 parks. One park in Long Island City, Queens, Hunters Point South Park. If you haven't been, you should go. It's amazing. And I also wrote about Domino Sugar Factory, or the park at the former sugar factory. And one of my stories made the cover, which was really cool. I'm also a master of really corny headlines, as you can see. And I think also another great part of my job is meeting up-and-coming architects and learning about what is going on and what is coming up. I just came from the new Glossier store in Soho. It opens tomorrow. It was designed by this young firm from Brooklyn, a husband and wife called PRO, and I wrote a profile about them in the magazine, and they've been doing some really cool stuff. So I've kept a relationship with them, and I visited this great space today, so that was really cool. Another favorite project that I wrote about is Magazzino Italian Art. It's actually by Manitoga, which Molly mentioned. It's a great new gallery in the Hudson Valley, and it specializes in arte povera art, if you're into that. And beyond record, I've also had the opportunity through this program, or the network of people involved in this program, to work on 2 other cool things. As Molly mentioned, Kimberly Burks' book, Design for Children, I helped out with that. And I actually, along with Lila Allen, who is also another person in our class, we got New York Times bylines recently, which was really cool. So yeah, the connections and the networking, this program has really helped me meet a lot of people and kind of form my own niche professionally. So, yep.
Okay, follow Alex. All right, next up, is Chetan here? I think he's in the back. Yeah, okay, Chetan, you're up. So, Chetan is in our current class, and he's only been here, just going on 2 months now, but he's going to talk to us about what his experience has been so far a bit, and also give us a little preview of what to expect at our reception this evening.
Is that louder?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of start by introducing myself, but I think I should address the costume in the room, which is that yes, I'm dressed up for the Diwali themed party we are having tonight, which basically means we are going to have spicy Indian food paired with beer and Bollywood music. So yeah, so hope you are going to stay on for that. My name is Chetan. I'm originally from south of India, a city called Bangalore. But what I considered home for the last 10 years was Dubai, where I was living and working as a marketing guy largely. I worked with a company called AC Nielsen. Some of you might have heard the market research company for almost 7 years. And then I kind of transitioned to working as head of marketing in a furniture company and mattress making company in Dubai. That is when kind of I had the chance to kind of start playing with a lot of product design and heading the product design in my company. And the whole idea of I should pursue this more seriously because I feel more passionate about it and I feel less angry about it when I'm in office. And so I kind of tinkered with the idea for 3 long years. I went quite around the world looking for programs, actually in Milan, Barcelona. I went to Stanford campus, I went to MIT, I went to Harvard campuses. And finally, I realized that this is the program I really want to take up and commit myself to, put my career and job and very comfortable lifestyle away in Dubai, because I think this program suited every requirement that I was looking for. Quick 1-year program. It kind of lets me not come necessarily with a mechanical engineering background or an architectural background or a designer background that I don't have because I'm a graduate of commerce and then I did my MBA. So this program was very welcoming of that, and so everything seemed perfect fit, and so I kind of jumped in to take up this program. And ever since I came here on the 15th of August, it's been a fantastic ride. I have enjoyed greatly every single day of the class. And of course, suffering a lot of self-doubt and anxiety several days, especially the last 2 weeks. Especially my friends back home who have been asking me how the program is, because they all think I'm quite crazy to have left behind a life in Dubai and 15 years of work experience to do design. And I said that I'm being constantly overwhelmed by the program, and I'd rather be overwhelmed by a great program than be underwhelmed by a bad program, because it's a serious gamble I have taken to take such a big break in my life and come here. So I'd rather have more things thrown at me than I can handle than much less things than I feel like, oh God, this is not what I signed up for. So yeah, it's been a fantastic program. We have sat on the steps of Times Square and meditated and discussed a 19th century architectural critique. We have gone to Manitoba, to the museums, and to offices of several really important architects. And the program has barely started. So I think it's going to be a fantastic ride. I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm having a great time so far. And what's been also really interesting is the group of classmates I've had here. Not the kind of classmates I had in MBA. All 60 of us were pretty much the same people. Here, 12 people are probably way more than 12 people, because the number of opinions we bring in the conversation is never what I expect to turn out. It's way too tangential, it's way too surprising every time, and I think it's fantastic for me to kind of factor in what design should be, to be kind of factor in things that's way out of your comfort zone, but also way out of what you could have ever imagined if you're in your own head. So it's been a great program so far. And well, that's all I wanted to say. So look forward to Bollywood and beer and Indian food soon. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chetan. Yes, we strategically overwhelm our students. As Chetan was saying, and also as Alex was saying, once you come through this program, you become part of not just a network, but a real family. And our students, as you've heard through some of the presentations just now, go on to work together on significant projects. They help each other get a leg up on job interviews. They help each other get published. This network extends, of course, to our faculty who are doing lots of interesting things out in the world, and also our close community of designers here at SVA and beyond. So it is a truly, I think it's a real honor to be able to work here and be part of this network too. So next up, I wanted to introduce a new faculty member who is, I see looming in the doorway, Spencer Bailey. So Spencer, I'm not doing significant introductions, so you'll say a few words. But so Spencer's going to be joining our faculty this spring, leading a course called the Design Media Landscape. And Spencer, I'll let you take it away.
First, I'll explain a little about who I am and why I would teach a course here. I think rather than a straight bio, it's probably more interesting for me to tell the story of how I came into design. Which is through cupcakes, funny enough. It was an odd thing to discover design in the way that I now know it through cupcakes, but I was in graduate school, this was almost 10 years ago, at Columbia in journalism, and we'd been assigned different reporting beats around the city, and I got assigned gentrification. And one of the things I noticed at the time, this was 2009, was that cupcake shops were popping up everywhere. And I wasn't so fascinated with cupcakes themselves, but actually what was this sort of buttery icing cake thing doing to the development of the city? How are these shops impacting the street? And so wrote a story that ended up being my first published in like a major newspaper story that was it was on the front page of the Metro section of the New York Daily News. And it was an exciting moment because I'd never published anything in a major newspaper. And when I reflected on it later, I realized it was all about design. It was about design's impact through retail, through storefront, through cityscape, and ultimately urban planning. So I became more and more fascinated with that, not realizing that it was actually a sort of design lens or a design angle to explore the world. And finished up at Columbia, started a job at the Daily Beast. Tina Brown, who was formerly at Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, was editing the Daily Beast. This was before it merged with Newsweek. It was a very fast-paced lifestyle in sort of online media, and realized quickly that was not necessarily the course that I wanted to go. And within 4 months found myself at a fledgling design publication called Surface. And I got in really at an interesting time for media, for magazines, and for design in the context of media and magazines. I ended up staying at Surface for almost a decade and just left this past May. And it was an interesting journey through both how print was evolving, how digital was evolving, how people were consuming content. And I was living and breathing and kind of in the thick of this world. Met Molly sometime along that journey. We actually did a talk together once at SOM about sort of writing and architecture, how to tell a story through a building. And so we've had sort of ongoing conversations that led to me pitching her the idea of doing a class on the design media landscape, actually sort of exploring through a workshop how design is mediated. So I'll briefly read sort of the description of the class, which will be this coming spring. It's going to focus on the ways in which design is mediated from design-centric publications to mass media, from podcasts to Instagram, from exhibitions to conferences, and how, in practical terms for today's distracted age, to turn a design-related media concept into a reality. So it's one thing to talk about these ideas, but I think to actually form an idea into something that's concrete and has the potential to exist in the world and ideally be profitable. Students will learn various modes and methods for communicating design to a broad audience, determining best practices while analyzing market opportunities, visiting journalists, editors, graphic designers, curators, museum directors, photographers, and filmmakers will offer real-world experience and applications so that students can more deeply understand how such enterprises are built and how to make an idea actionable and realizable. So by the end of the class, the idea is sort of Shark Tank style, that we'll have the students come in front of a sort of panel of experts and present their concept for a design media company. And it's not going to be prescribed. It could be sort of any platform, but obviously it should ideally be one that seems pragmatic and practical for bringing into the world. So week one, we'll sort of look at how we got here. What's the history of design in media? How has it been mediated through these sort of experiences up to now? Week two, we'll sort of look more at the current state of media. How did we get here? What are we actually looking at? What's out there? What's working? What's not? And why? The third week, we'll focus on how do you actually make a design platform. So how do you package these things together into something that can exist? How do you create a voice? How do you do something that's original and different from what's already out there? And then also during some of these courses, we'd be bringing in guests to sort of explain and elucidate on some of these things. It's not, I don't want to be the one all the time sort of explaining it. The idea is to bring in different voices and show different perspectives of what works, what doesn't, and why. Then week 5 would be sort of students pitching their brand decks. And this would be sort of the idea of having it really be a conversation with the people who are out there making this content and these kinds of things already. So I have a long list of lecturers and sort of people who I would imagine could come in and talk. But I'll name a few of them. Glenn Adamson, who's the former director of the Museum of Arts and Design in New York. He's a curator, he's a writer, he's a historian. He has a great new book out called Fewer Better Things. I recommend you all read it. Iwan Bond, who's an architectural photographer and travels all over the world photographing buildings, mostly from helicopters. If we can get him in New York, he'll come in. Andrew Zuckerman, who's actually standing in the back of the room and is a SVA grad and studied photography here. I haven't announced it yet, but we are co-founding a media company together. So this sort of actually comes at a really interesting moment because in my own career, in addition to, post-Surface, I was sort of thinking like, what am I doing next? So in addition to teaching, I've joined Phaidon as editor-at-large, so I'm acting as sort of a roving editor for the publisher and helping bring in book concepts, but also edit one or two a year. I'm also writing for Town and Country magazine as a contributing editor where I'm covering architecture and design, so trying to explore the value of good design to a broad audience. And with this other media platform we're creating, it's actually more design-led, less design-focused, and I can't say too much about it yet, but I can say that it will focus primarily on audio and video and be a digital property. So this will include various readings, again, have multiple experts, and the idea is to have students leave the class, come away from the class at the end with something that allows them to potentially bring their idea as a graduate of SVA into the world. Thanks.
Okay.